Okay, let's get started. Welcome to this session. Nice to see so many people here. In this session, in this event in general, it's nice to get back to this mode of going to the events and meeting new people. First things first, I would like kindly ask everybody that doesn't believe in climate change to leave the room. I was talking this same session in WordPress. Yeah, but I was talking this same session in WordPress event and everybody left at this point. Not really, but joking aside. So welcome, my name is Janne Koponen. I work at Wonder as a head of technology nowadays. Been working there for 10 years throughout quite many different roles. Started as a developer and working my way up from there. And somehow ended up in the management. The green tech thinking, the topic today is really something that I'm passionate about, and I really feel that we need to do something, and I'm sure that everybody here is already doing something for the environment. And if you could give a couple of examples what you are doing personally, there's something that you are doing. Nobody's doing anything.
Working from home office as a start.
Yes, that's good. Recycling.
Drinking less coffee.
No. Yeah, there's a certain limit how far are you willing to go, and that's kind of the idea that you don't have to go all in, because, for example, I could go completely off-grid and neutralize my carbon footprint, for example, but it would make any difference. It's actually better that I use some technology and utilize the technology to get this message through and spread in the word. And you can do it the same with your circle of influence as well. Maybe through technology or maybe just in person. But why green tech thinking? Of course, there's these common things that you can do, but there is also a lot of things in the technology field that we can do. On a personal level, of course, we can keep our appliance a bit longer, not changing every year the phones or get the latest gadgets or anything like that. But as an industry, I think there we have a massive chance to actually make a difference. Because internet is quite a big part of the global emissions. And it is growing really fast. Already 2017, the internet power consumption was more than the aviation industry. That is usually thought it's the great polluter. But internet has passed that already. And through the recent years, of course, at the beginning of the pandemic, the global emissions went down, but then actually the internet consumption grew really rapidly because everybody was working at home. There was nothing else to do than surf the internet or watch Netflix or something like that. So that increased it. But there was a good side to that as well, that a lot of these, for example, public sector services had to go to the internet because they had to serve their customers, but with minimal physical contact and that kind of stuff. And there, even if the internet is growing, it can reduce from somewhere else. And there we can get the first impact, that moving those traditional services to the internet closer to the clients and make the impact that way. But of course, as people and companies building the internet, I think that in this room, in this conference, we are already maybe serving millions, tens of millions of customers. So it's way beyond our personal impact of what we can do as a persons, reducing our consumption, but we can make an impact of millions of people's internet usage. Because in average, an average internet user consumes as much or produces as much CO2 as one intercontinental flight. So it's quite a lot when you think about it. And many of us maybe compensate, for example, if you are flying, you compensate the flights. But how many compensates your internet usage? Exactly. So that's something that, well, it's the individual actions are so small that it doesn't make a difference. But in a larger scale, it adds up. For example, one Google search consumes basically nothing. But every second, all the Google searches done equals to the CO2 amount that 23 trees has to work for 1 year to offset that. So if we can just reduce a couple of Google searches that our users do, that's already a huge impact. But what can we do as a companies and the developers of the internet to reduce this amount? There are 4 main areas where the consumption comes from. First is the developer machines and those kind of stuff. On an individual level, of course, they are not adding up that much, but there is a effect that when we have these really powerful latest tech machines that can crunch through even the most complex websites, they will feel really fast. But average user don't have that kind of machine, so we end up of creating too much complexity maybe there, and we don't consider that maybe it should be also considered that making it lean. Then, of course, there is the end user appliances, devices, and directly from the reason 1, because we are doing heavier and heavier sites, they need to renew their machines every year or 2 years, keeping up with the, like everything starts feeling slow because developers get new machines, everything feels fast, but the consumers don't follow that, or they are forced to follow that because of that. And that's actually 50% of the internet power consumption comes from the end user machines, their production, their transportation. Of course, there's a lot of e-waste produced because of the fast cycle of renewing those things. Then there is the, well, servers / code that we have the most impact. Making more efficient code that can run faster, requires less resources from the servers, and that way reducing it. And also on the hosting side, using scalable infrastructure that can match the need of the application or service and scaling up, and not going this old way of just sizing the server for the peak traffic because it needs to handle the peak traffic, but of course then it's there just in case if the peak traffic happens and we need a lot more resources reserved for that. Scaling in any way can help that when there is less traffic, the infrastructure scales down, and then it can handle the peaks by scaling up, but not wasting that much resources. And the last thing is the transfer. So of course the data needs to be transferred from the servers to the end user devices. And there the network is another 25% of the consumption. So there again, reducing the size of the site has big impact. Making it smaller, it can be transferred faster using CDN when it's shorter distance to cover the end or the final distance between the serving caches and the end user machines can reduce the amount of needed. Every single node between the servers and the end user machine uses some small amount of energy. So there can be saved a lot as well. But it's not only about the technology and how we can reduce it by these technological means. It's also about the design. So there is these design principles that can also make more sustainable websites. Like some devices benefit from dark color schemes. Of course, the design, how much pictures are used, like the size of the pictures and that kind of stuff. That can have an impact as well. And then there is the service design / CEO. That there used to be this metrics that we measured that how many page view our services get, and bigger is better. But let's get just as many web views as we can, and of course that leads to the thing that we try to design the site so that people need to click multiple links and we are getting page views. But if they can find what they are looking for more directly and reduce the page views, and we need to switch to measuring that how fast the user finds what they are looking for. So designing the site so that it's easy to find what the user comes for it, and then the CEO, that if the Google search is done, it gives good results, and you don't have to go through multiple pages and then go to the site, and it was not actually this, but then you need to navigate the site still. These are all small things, and alone for the single page view, one design element change doesn't change anything, but there are a lot of things that we can do for the small things, and we have a lot of reach. So there is a lot of customers where we can reduce this kind of environmental impact in a sense. And as companies presented here, we can do something, then we can spread as a Drupal community, we can spread the word, and being this pioneer and thought leader that this is how it's done, it generates that then customers start asking for these kind of things. We need to be there that, yeah, we are already considering these kind of things, and it's also good for the business. And it's also easy to sell because all these things that goes into reducing the footprint also benefits the end user experience, because the sites are faster, easier to navigate, and of course the customers pay less because there are not excess resources reserved from the servers and that kind of stuff. So it's a sum of so many things, but kind of introducing this green tech thinking in the daily life and evaluating in every action that is this really necessary? And for example, I don't have slides. Well, kind of defeats the purpose because the screen is still on. It saves a couple of watts maybe when it would be turned off for the duration of this meeting. But kind of I can convey the idea just by speaking. And I have the notes also recycled because I have been giving this piece earlier, so I didn't even have to waste the paper that is recycled paper anyway. But small things, remember it always when you are doing something, that taking into account this is really necessary, can be done more efficiently. And for that, like I said, I don't have slides. I want to keep this short, just implement this one idea in your minds, keeping it there, considering everything, whether it is simple things that do I really need to know what year the song Despacito was released and Googling it. Is that really necessary? It doesn't change anything, but if a billion people thinks like that, it's already in 1 second those Google searches, that amount less is 22 trees. But we can do this together. And let's show the way. Thank you. And now we have plenty of time for questions and discussion.
I was thinking about our most common habits, and what comes into my mind is browsing Facebook and then having Zoom calls. And what are your recommendations for this? How can we kind of save the world or planet in these habits? So I assume that they have a significant footprint. So
Yes, definitely. And I think,
should we share the screen or keep the camera on, or is it better to have it off? So
yeah, I think there again, let's start with the Zoom calls or video calls, that really thinking that is this meeting necessary? Could it have been an email instead? But then also making sure that you are not overextending the meetings and keeping the topic and making them efficient. But with the remote, I think that it's a smaller evil having those Zoom meetings or video meetings instead of driving to the office and we said that, so we are offsetting, but still like taking it further. And of course with Facebook, well, my recommendation is get out of it completely, but I know that it's hard and I have other guilty pleasures like that I am following, but keeping it in check is also good for your mental health. You're not being in this, like every time is the new notification and jumping in, but reserving the time going through it and not sticking there and just scrolling for the sake of it.
and during the video call, drink water, not coffee. So
Yeah,
that would be also good.
that's also good.
Do you also know the digital footprint what we have in EU? So are there any data available about this?
Well, there was some data, not about the EU in particular, but kind of like this, like internet power users versus like there's few hundred million power users, and then there's the rest of like 4.5 million internet users, and like this Western countries, Europe and Americas is mostly in that power user category, and it was like 90% of the consumption. And that's a good thing, that the good topic that there is the next billion users that are from the emerging markets coming from the lower end, and they won't add that much to the consumption. But then there's the next billion power users that are coming to the same level as the current power users, and that's kind of quadrupling the footprint of the internet as a whole.
Do you know of any tool that you can use to measure your internet usage carbon footprints? Like,
Well, personal.
yeah, like based on your browser activity or.
Yeah, I think there are at least some like these browser extensions. I don't remember them by name, but I know that there are. And then of course there is a really good site called websitecarbon.com where you can measure your website's carbon footprint. So one page load, how much CO2 it produces.
But that one, the website carbon, measures only based on the data and it depends on the amount of data, and then extrapolates for how much carbon is needed to render it and how much carbon is needed to create it. So it's not that kind of, I think it's if you are sort of getting a lot of static files coming from memory caches compared to your complex operation with databases, it's very different. And then also they use global averages for the carbon emissions per electricity. And for example, Finnish electricity was a month ago 29 grams of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilowatt hour, and in Germany it was almost 600. So it's 20 times dirtier in Germany than in Finland electricity. So it depends a lot on what kind of networks you're using and so forth. So that it's a global average. Of course, it tells you on the website that if you get the numbers down, then you're moving in the right direction, but it doesn't tell you that what is the footprint itself. And that's way more complex calculation. For the Kati's comment, I would also add that the less you use mobile transfer, the better, because it's 100 times more electricity or less electricity efficient, and then the worst case is to watch 4K movies in very big screen with mobile connection. That is the way to make most consumption of electricity. So, if, for example, if you watch movies with your phone, then get into Wi-Fi, and then watch from that small screen, because that's way more efficient than these kind of screens.
Yeah, those are good points. And like it's really hard to measure the carbon footprint of the website because there's so many things that goes into it, like from the servers to the networking and the electricity price and transfer rates and for example if it's over the Wi-Fi or mobile network. So it's hard, but kind of getting this like baseline that, especially when you are like then going to optimize one website, that you can see the change there.
There's actually a study made by our university that they analyzed 1,000 biggest websites in Finland, or the common ones. It's in Finnish only, but can be found from there's an article in Yle about it, so if some Estonians at least can read it. And there's where the websites, where the data is coming from, that it's split images and videos and so forth. And that's eye-opening. I suggest to check it out, because then tells where are the sort of easiest targets for the reduction.
Yeah.
I don't know why they did it in Finnish. That's a good question for you, because I haven't seen those kind of studies abroad at all.
Yeah, so it shows maybe there will be a translated version at some point. You have?
Yeah, I just it's a very tricky topic. We also had numerous discussions inside our company about this, and there's endless debates. But isn't it like much more efficient to focus on how energy is produced, as like previously the gentleman just told? Like it really matters how you produce that energy, because then the whole measurement on what you consume by using the internet can change drastically. And while you might think that you're making an impact, you actually don't. And it also brings a huge amount of these moral discussions, like how can you then scroll TikTok for several hours? It's an absolute net waste of anything, including your own time and the global energy consumption. I totally buy the topic on improving user experience, but it stems from the consumption factor. I want to use fast websites, easy to read, accessible website, because that's how I consume information much faster. I don't get annoyed and so on and so forth. And that's going to be a driver to actually change the behavior or implement the standard for the consumers that they're using the websites this way. And whenever they stumble upon which is clumsy and slow and so on, we just shut it down and we'll receive no traffic.
Yeah, that's really good point of view, and actually the internet is growing faster than the renewables. So that's the problem, that we are consuming more, and even like internet companies, all the like the hosting companies, cloud companies are in the forefront of using renewables. Like for example, Google is carbon neutral, and others are trying to reach that. So yes, it's there, but like I said, the internet is growing faster than the renewables. I think maybe it has changed now because of the current events, that there is more push for the renewable energy, but that's the reason. And even if we run the internet completely from the sustainable energy, then that capacity is away from the other industries. So they also need to move to green energy, and if internet is consuming all the green energy, and then we can wash our hands that, yeah, we are doing our part, but we are actually eating their share of the green energy.
It's called the principle of the last source. That's what is the, if the energy is consumed so much that you need to fire a coal plant, and then it doesn't really matter where the energy goes, because it goes somewhere. And if it's there's less energy used, then you don't need to fire up the coal plant, and so forth. So the problem is that now for example, Finland, the energy prices were really this week or last week they were really low.
This week it was almost negative.
Yeah, and then they shut down the nuclear plant for testing. It was in test mode still, and it's immediately ran up, because then they need to produce the energy with gas, or there was the cell to Estonia, and then to Latvia, Lithuania, so forth. So there's these kind of effects happen. So it's easier to save energy. And the other thing is also that you can't really affect the energy plants as a coder, but you can affect the energy consumption of the code. So do those things that you can. Of course, you can, as a business person, can say we use renewable energy. But if you could use less renewable energy, then you would get like double.
Maybe a question in general. How, let's say, you are satisfied with your current energy, sort of. I don't want to move this discussion to a sort of a negative side. So positive things that you see that Finland has done to get to where you are right now. You produce a lot of energy, and sort of what are the positives there? We of course in Estonia are disgruntled because we don't produce enough energy, and we have our own problems, but what are maybe some positive things?
Well, I don't know that much about the energy policy side and those kind of industry benefits there, but of course, we have a lot of wind energy, and that was, for example, the reason that Janne mentioned that we have almost negative energy prices, because it was windy day. So we can have this big production based on the weather conditions when we can do overproduction. But then of course we are relying on that, and if there's no wind, there's no energy. But that's kind of like showing that we can, and the wind energy can work and produce as well all this stuff, and we can get something back every now and then. And of course, like then balancing it out between different countries, that we have these periods of time.
Janne, I can add, I participated in Impact Day conference last week, and that was exactly one topic that was discussed there, consumption of water, energy, and so on. And the bottom line is that we have a huge advantage now, because the production is adaptive, so it depends from the consumption. If we change our small habits, then it has immediate impact. So if you don't drink, or if you don't watch your movies from mobile, you are consuming less, and the production will adapt it immediately. So this is what is our option, and how we can kind of keep it more positive, and making our own decisions that which impact I would like to have. Is it like positive or negative? Because it starts from you. If we don't consume so much energy, then like the world will be in a way greener. So
There was an article in Helsinki Sanomat about the Finnish energy consumption drop. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that. Didn't have time to read it.
So it said that the Finnish homes have reduced the energy usage in September by 15%. One line. Probably because of not the solar.
Yeah, that's the biggest consumption in Finland. Yeah.
Sorry, I'll touch on it. But we, for example, moved our electric car that it charges all the nights, and we have reduced the amount of solar that we go there when the energy is cheap. So actually, these kind of when the energy prices fluctuate, and if you can change your habits, then that saves energy. Because when energy price is cheap, then it's typically renewable also. So then it's safe to use energy, because then you can't buy coal plants or gas plants because you don't get enough money to buy the emission certificates.
Yeah. And I think, for example, in Finland, some heavy industries have shifted their production to the night time because then it's the cheaper and less consumption of the energy, and they can save and also use more green energy there. Maybe like making that it's not just about like there are these spot price utility contracts that you can get the best price. Of course, there's the benefit, but it's also for the like everybody else following that when it's the lowest price, it's also the greenest. So maybe timing your Facebook browsing on those times and that kind of stuff. Anything else? Okay, then let's move on. Thank you for coming.
thank you.